Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With your 2025 WWE Elimination Chamber Instant Analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here just moments after WWE Elimination Chamber went off the air with one of the most memorable moments in WWE history, closing the show. Yet we are here to break down everything that happened on the final WWE Premium Live event on the road to WrestleMania 41. Vintage Chris Vanini will be along momentarily. Off the top, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about the fight.
Head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full audio episodes, clips of our video interviews at Getting Overcast on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Episode drops, news analysis highlights, all of that good stuff. You also get to vote in pre- and post-show polls like the ones we posted for WWE Elimination Chamber. Because this is an instant analysis episode, the Silver King does something special. He cracks open a cold one. And tonight, first time we're cracking up one of these in a while on this show due to illness and a bunch of other reasons. But I have Pocket Sandwich from Royal Palm Brewing, a peanut butter and jelly goes. You all probably don't know this about the Silver King. Big fan of peanut butter and jelly, so can't wait to try this. Vintage, welcome to the show. We have a lot to talk about, but first, what do you got there?
That sounds delicious, by the way. I'm on probably the other
sip.
side of the spectrum here. I just grabbed a Mike's Hard Lemonade. Didn't have a lot in the fridge actually today. It had been a while, like you said, since we opened a cold one. I was driving home from the Rumble. We didn't have a December pay-per-view, so it's been a minute, and I was not properly prepared.
Yeah.
But I got a Mike's, and these are perfectly fine.
Yeah, one night I was sick. Another time we were working. It just didn't really come together. I'm actually shocked you don't have like Terramana or Zoa Energy over there.
I know. I tell you what. You know what's funny?
Papa Tui.
We did that emergency pod last Friday after
did.
The Rock turns out. And we're both not happy. I'm furious. We got a lot of great comments from the listeners who love the show. But we did that show long enough that we, at the very end, we came around to something that we thought would be a really cool idea.
We did.
And here we are. Where it happened.
It did happen. Now, we're going to handle this podcast as we normally do. Give you a full WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis. Talk about the go-home SmackDown. All the individual segments from Elimination Chamber. But look, something major happened in WWE tonight. And just off the top, let's tell you what it was. John Cena, in the year of our Lord 2025, turned heel. He won the Men's Elimination Chamber. Cody Rhodes came out immediately afterward. The Rock followed. Cody had to give the answer on whether he sold his soul to Dwayne Johnson. Of course, Cody said no because he's the ultimate white meat babyface. John Cena kicks him in the gonads, brutalizes him all at Rock's direction. You teased it. It's exactly what we thought was going to happen 8 days ago when we did our special emergency podcast, our instant reaction to The Rock's return on SmackDown. And Chris, we're going to get into all of the detail on this momentarily on this show. But straight up off the top, one of the most energizing and memorable moments that WWE has put on screen in a long ass time. And this is coming off of 11 months ago. Cody finishing the story, WWE landing the plane on what I still believe was the greatest storyline in professional wrestling history.
Yeah, and now we have a two-man Hollywood power trip.
We do.
Have, I like to call them the Break-A-Wish Foundation. Hat tip to my brother for that one, coming up with that one. And a world of possibility over the next 49 days. And I cannot wait to watch Monday Night Raw and SmackDown for the next however many weeks that's going to be, after we've been very critical of what WWE television has been the last couple of weeks. But
you more so than I. We've been very critical of SmackDown specifically Raw's been fine, but it hasn't been great.
But we knew come Chamber,
Mm-hmm.
when Cena would be making the full-time return, they would be kicking it into high gear.
Correct.
And we are now there. And it's going to be extremely cool. And even though we kind of talked our way into predicting it last week, it was still crazy to see.
Absolutely. Because, listen, it's one of those you're not going to believe it until you actually see it moments.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually effing saw it. I also forgot to mention WWE purposefully aired an uncensored F-bomb in the main event segment of Elimination Chamber. So there is literally a ton to talk about on this episode of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Before we get to that, though, I need to remind you that on this show,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. We also published a fastest 15 minutes in professional wrestling, a last-second go-home instant reaction between Silver King and Vintage. We did it for free on Friday night. Our most listened to one of those that we've ever done, even the free ones that we occasionally do. That's just a taste of what you get when you sign up for buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We hope you do, and you financially support the continuation of this podcast. Chris, we teased it off the top. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go into the full WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis. Now, we're going to skip all updates from the post-show press conference. We're going to save those for Tuesday's WWE episode, when we also will take a second look at WWE Elimination Chamber. Before we get match by match and all the go-home moments from SmackDown out of the way, couple odds and ends, just the start of Elimination Chamber. So the Star Spangled Banner was booed at show open. I have to believe that's the first time it's ever happened in WWE history. If you're unfamiliar with the reason, you can Google it. That's not what this show is about. But what put me off a bit, Chris, was Pat McAfee yelling into the camera moments later, "Canada, you suck. All you fans suck for doing that." WWE is supposed to be an international company now, not just American. And I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me insulting the fans like that at the start of a show in their country. He's not a heel commentator. When he did it once, I was going to excuse it as shtick. He did it twice more before the second match even began. He was incredibly annoying at the open of this show. And I just felt it was worth saying at the top.
Yeah, it was too much. It was too over the top. He hasn't been great the last couple of weeks. It really, I mean, he came back. He's been back about 2 months now, and it has not hit the way it did previously. He is a bit over the top.
He gets worse every time he comes back, I would say.
Yeah, like the initial reaction, that's fine. And like it was shtick. Like he was kind of doing it in sort of in character. I know he's not a heel, but he was doing it kind of character-y. But then he just kind of kept going back to it. I was like,
right,
dude, we're past that.
Let it go.
There's a show on.
Yeah, let's go. I also wanted to mention the show opened with full pyro. I know some stadiums and arenas have restrictions, but when possible, WWE should do that to open every PLE. It just gives the entire event a gravitas that the laser lights and all the other bullshit just doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for PLEs and TV and everything. I mean, that the highlight, the peak of, you know, Raw is War and SmackDown back in the Attitude Era was you knew you were just going to open up with a bang, and it just got your adrenaline going. So it was great.
I also miss the show intros opening, like the packages, the theme packages.
Yeah.
And then you go right into the pyro, you get all the pyro, and then you go into the show. Like there was just something special about that they've really gone away from, really in all of wrestling, but especially WWE. Now, the big segment on Elimination Chamber was Cody Rhodes answering The Rock as to whether he would sell out, or in Dwayne Johnson's words, sell his soul. So first, what we're going to do is go over the go-home moments from SmackDown when it comes to this. Then we're going to break down the men's Elimination Chamber match. And then we'll discuss Cody and The Rock, which succeeded the men's Elimination Chamber Saturday night. What stood out to me on the opening of SmackDown, which distilled the word salad of Dwayne's segment from last week into like a 90-second package, was how it was much clearer, yet still convoluted. Anyway, Cody walked into the arena with 2 random suits directing him to a locker room that they said was appointed for him by Dwayne. It was basically the restaurant in the building with a sushi tray. That's it, a sushi tray. R-Truth was chilling on the couch looking like Rick James from Chappelle's Show. He was funny, mistaking Rock for Rocky Johnson, which was an excellent reference given Soul Man and all, but no one in the crowd seemed to get it. Let me tell you what bothered me here. And you may roll your eyes, but I legitimately feel this way. Cody does this gimmick outside the ring, largely on social media. It's been consistent, where he hates truth because truth beat Stardust 15 straight times from 2015 to 16. And I've been such a fan of that the last couple of years. So this was the inverse of like drinking tequila with Rock to me. Beyond that, Rock is supposed to be tempting Cody with stuff he cannot otherwise obtain. I'm pretty sure Cody, the WWE champion, can acquire a sushi tray. There should have been like a $10,000 bottle of tequila there or, something crazy. This was also a massively missed opportunity, I thought, Chris, for Rhodes to show some edge and like kick truth out. Like teasing viewers he might actually be turning heel because he's actually just frustrated and confused. Instead, he just acted uneasy. The goal should have been to create doubt in his character at some point during the show. They didn't actually do that. Like, is the white meat babyface actually considering this? So I know this is like a small thing to speak long about, but this got 30% as much impact as it actually could have if they thought it through a little bit more.
Well, I mean, he did get offered more stuff later, but so I guess I kind of disagree on the sushi tray part. But overall, yes, there was never a moment where like Cody started to think about it.
Like if he's just like, get out of here, man, you're bothering me. But people, oh shit, why is he treating truth like that? He's ultimate babyface, He just didn't really do any of that. So Drew McIntyre later approached Rhodes, who had already left his special room. Drew said he knows Cody will say yes to Rock because he sold his soul a long time ago. Perfect for Drew to deliver that. Cody then came across Miz, who put over The Rock as the man who runs Hollywood. He made Rhodes feel his skin, crediting the softness to Papa Tui, saying it could be Cody Tui. That did not get a reaction from the crowd. This is a consistent deal with Toronto, both Friday and Saturday. But I laughed out loud at Cody Tui. Miz said Cody.
Wait. Wasn't it Papa Cody?
I thought it was Cody Tui. Was it Papa Cody? Whatever it was.
I thought he said Papa Cody.
I think it was Cody Tui. Regardless, either way, it was hysterical. Miz said Cody could be the fourth judge on a failed TV show or a legitimate Hollywood star. Shots fired at Go Big Show. Miz reminded Rhodes there's so much more than just being at the top of WWE, and to get it, he has to take Rock's offer or someone else will. This moment with Miz sold the Rock storyline better than anything that preceded it. Dwayne last week, Rollins on Monday, which itself was quality. No shade for Seth there. But shout out to Miz for doing the Lord's work and helping bring all this together. DJ should be sending him a case of Terramana for selling this storyline better than Rock did himself.
I mean, sort of. You were way into that segment much more than I am. There is a moment later on SmackDown where they finally nailed it, but it wasn't any of the in-ring wrestlers who sold it for me.
You don't think Miz upped the ante here?
No, because he's Miz. Like, his whole character is like mid to low tier Hollywood guy. So like you
right. He's the one saying, dude, you can't pass up on The Rock. Like, look, he's almost basically saying, look where I am and I'm in Hollywood. Look where you could be. Because this is what Rock's offering you.
Yeah, but when it comes from the heel, you don't buy it though. Like,
okay.
You just know, you're like, yeah.
Right. To each their own. I'm shocked that you feel that way. But let's keep going. When Rhodes approached CM Punk backstage, Punk laughed at the absurd concept of Rock wanting Cody's soul.
Thank you.
He asked what Rock even has to offer, saying he, Punk, might have actually taken it when he was younger because it would have made him a huge star and gotten him a WrestleMania main event. However, he's happy the offer never came. Punk said Rhodes should take the offer, shine it up real good, and stick it up his part-time Hollywood candy ass. He reminded Cody that he got to this point by listening to his heart. I thought this was good stuff from Punk as well. Another segment with Miz, Rollins, and McIntyre, preceding it, I was going to say, that did a good job doubling back and really improving upon the original Rock confrontation. It's almost as if the full-timers, they go through all the reps, they think through their promos, they don't just go out there improving, and shocker, all their segments were better than the guy who just went out there and shot from the hip.
Yeah, this was good. I like this from Punk, but also like he didn't seem to fully buy that Cody could do it either. It was very friendly.
It was, yes. He's like, this isn't even a consideration.
It was,
yeah.
Right, but it was still a good effort.
So Michael Cole interviewed Cody in the final segment of SmackDown. He tugged at heartstrings, putting Cody over for remaking himself and honoring his father's legacy. Cole called him out for trying to deflect and explained everything that was on the line. Picking his matches and events, getting off the road, not needing the tour bus, instead staying home with his family. It was almost like Cole was convincing him to do it. Then he pointed to a red Raptor pickup truck that got rolled into the arena with American Nightmare stickers on it. And I was like, really? They couldn't have spent the money and done a paint job for this vehicle? But let's briefly pause here. Cole literally sold Rock's offer better than Rock. He gave Cody all the motivation he needed to sell out and take the offer, particularly getting into how Cody could be off the road and home with his family. It was so much more effective than talking about riches and fame. DJ should have hired Miz and Cole as his salesmen because they were actually convincing.
Thank you, Michael Cole. He was the first person out of anybody to explain what this actually means. And he explained it tremendously. Like, he laid out all the things, like, there are things that it would make sense for Cody to consider. Fighting when he wants to, not having to do all the live shows, all these things that we said a week ago on the pod that were not laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they weren't laid out on Raw or on SmackDown until the very end when Michael Cole said it. So thank you, Michael Cole, for saying what The Rock should have said 7 days prior. Thank you.
Rock then appeared in a taped segment on the Titantron. He was approaching a private jet, holding a weight belt over his shoulder. Rock informed us that he's been talking and texting with Cody all week. They even FaceTimed once. Rock these days always throws in like an unnecessary detail that adds nothing to what he's trying to say. He also said he's been talking to Dusty Rhodes all week and knew through him, in heaven, that Cody would do the right thing. Rock was ready to embrace him as a brother and champion, ready to make his dreams come true. He mentioned the soul like 6 more times, and then he unveiled the weight belt. It literally read Cody's Soul, June 11th, 2015, which was the date of Dusty's death. A faction of fans did chant, "Sell your soul." It was minimal. And I swear to you, it felt like the final 60 seconds of SmackDown were done as a direct low blow to yours truly. I loved the way the Cody story developed throughout the entire episode. We just discussed that. I was even into 85% of Rock's promo, despite the audio being horrendous because it was taped on a tarmac with a jet engine running. Heaven forbid they make it audible. And then, just as I'm ready, I'm finishing my notes, I'm going to roundly praise this. They jam like 6 mentions of the soul into the final 60 seconds of the show, and they show off that stupid weight belt. If you're Rock and you want a guy to sell out, and I say this professionally as someone who once literally worked in ticket sales for a couple years, and I was the top salesman in my department, I can sell, okay? What you're supposed to do is eliminate the negatives and accentuate the positives. The positives are the money and the fame and the time off and all the stuff he can offer. The lone negative is the concept of Cody selling out. Rock is a terrible salesman. All he did at the end, the close of his pitch, and coffee is for closers only, all he did was continue to remind him of the negative, selling his soul. No coffee for Dwayne, only Zoa energy. I know the soul part doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me, but this is precisely why I've hated it so much, especially them blatantly putting Cody's soul on a weight belt with the effing date of his father's death. Their pitch should not be that he's selling his soul. He's taking care of his family and legacy, not that he's selling out. I'm going to stop ranting about it. The soul has been a thorn in my side. I love what Cole and Rock did here, but I had to say it.
Well, Rock was way better here than he was a week prior, so there was that at least. And it wouldn't be wrestling if they didn't lay it on a little thick. So I thought, but this goes back to why it should have been join the dark side and not, hey, we're best friends.
Right.
That was the disconnect I had a week ago, and that's why I still did. But anyway,
it should have been go Hollywood, make your life easier, all of that. And then you have the other people say, the tangential people, don't sell your soul. Don't sell out. Like, that should have been what other people tell Cody. It shouldn't have been what Rock was telling Cody. That's what I was trying to get at the entire time.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
Okay, we'll move on from it finally. So that was the build for Cody and Rock. Let's talk about the build for Men's Elimination Chamber. John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, and Logan Paul. McIntyre on SmackDown cut off a Cena video package, called him a hypocrite. Then he did a pipe bomb on the announce table reminding how Cena criticized Rock only to become just like him. Hint, hint. McIntyre said he'd bury Cena for his backstage politics. Priest interrupted, calling him transparent because he's still obsessed with Punk. He's even sitting like him. Priest promised to eliminate McIntyre. Rollins interrupted, wearing what I can only describe as a red moving blanket that was fashioned into a jacket and pants. Rollins panned McIntyre's cash-in, told Priest he'd have beaten him for the title if not for a variety of circumstances. He said he's a different, obviously much healthier guy now. Punk was next, saying they're all obsessed with him, yet he's obsessed with main eventing WrestleMania. He also took a shot at Rollins for their win a month ago and called him an overcooked oven mitt. I believe my comparison was better. Punk was cooking nevertheless. Punk took offense to the fact that he was asked during the kickoff about selling his soul, and he said he knows McIntyre doesn't have one because he snatched it from him at Hell in a Cell. Then Punk shot at Cena for starting a retirement tour, but not actually touring. Rollins told Punk he will not main event Mania over his dead body, or he, I guess, will main event Mania over his dead body. McIntyre and Priest faced off as Rollins and Punk did the same, and then Cena's music surprisingly hit, except it was Paul, which was honestly fantastic. Logan put himself with the others as a full-timer. He called Cena a classic celebrity wrestler. Fans were hot. They were loudly chanting, "Fuck you, Logan." And of course, he also had to get a little bit of cheap heat.
Well, they're really bad guys now because they cut down the city's sports team. That's what you do when you're a bad guy.
Logan was actually rolling hot for the first third, and then he completely fell apart with some weak-ass lines. It was the low point of what was a hot segment otherwise, and you could actively see all the other wrestlers rolling their eyes at him. In reality, not kayfabe. As longtime listener Jay May Sr. wrote him, he started hot and flushed it in a moment. He's completely exposed himself over the last few weeks. He shocked us with his athleticism a few times. That's the extent of his abilities as a wrestler. Punk continues to be straight fire on the mic since the start of the year. McIntyre and Rollins were excellent as usual. Priest severely lacked, which is usual with him. He just doesn't really have the aura of a main eventer. And that's not something you can force. He was out of place here. Overall, Chris, this definitely upped the ante for Chamber, delivered some of what we were talking about on the Ultimate Preview, reminding us that we're getting Punk Rollins, Punk McIntyre, plus last year's WrestleMania title match and the Money in the Bank cash-in all in one match. And we wanted that on the Ultimate Preview. They delivered it to us on the Go Home Show.
It did a good job of convincing both of us, even more so, that McIntyre had a chance to win this thing. We both upped our percentages on the
we did
fastest 15 minutes. I went up to I forget, like 15 or 20%.
I think you said 20%.
I think moved him ahead of. I think you'd moved him ahead of Punk, but I had 0% going in, and then they did a good segment where I was like, hey, maybe this could be McIntyre.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of this, it felt like Cena and Paul was actually a WrestleMania tease. We know that was a swerve, but it did feel like a tease. And we said on that instant reaction Friday on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover that it suddenly seemed like the entire deal that I put together when we were talking about like potential winners of McIntyre, like having the storyline to be Rock's champion, it seemed like they might actually go with that. He was the centerpiece of this segment. Punk was the star, but McIntyre was the centerpiece. I went from, I think it was 40, I don't even remember what my old percentages were, but I went to 50 Cena, 50 McIntyre, 0 Punk. And I think you went to 20% McIntyre when you were at 0 McIntyre previously. We gave predictions in terms of who we thought would win based on percentages. So yeah, they completely swerved me in this, and I loved it. I loved the job they did, and also that they had us questioning what we thought we knew going into Chamber.
Yes, I did.
Let's get to Elimination Chamber. Logan entered with an American flag for heat, which actually sucks to say in 2025. Rollins and McIntyre started, which was to be expected. Drew took him out with a seesaw into the steel bar on the bottom turnbuckle before Priest entered as a callback to WrestleMania 40. He threw Rollins into McIntyre with a razor's edge, only to eat Glasgow kiss. McIntyre powerbombed him into Priest. Rollins leapt over McIntyre in a tree of woe, only for Drew to base a hanging Tower of Doom. Paul was second out, having drawn OVO on the plexiglass. Of course, he would be on Drake's side. By the way, Drake was there sitting front row. They did not show him on screen.
He was. They didn't show him. They didn't highlight him. I found that fascinating.
I'm curious.
Several other rappers.
I'm curious if he actively told them he didn't want to be on.
I'm sure that's what happened.
Priest did.
He was sitting behind. He was sitting behind commentary, so it wasn't like he was.
I thought he was row 1 hard cam.
I saw a clip of him behind the commentary.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So Priest did an old school Hurricanrana. Shout out to you for that play. I didn't think you had that in you. Cena was third, which surprised me. I just expected that part of this would be that he was using his stroke to maximize his rest and come out last. Cena went on a massive run, hitting multiple attitude adjustments and signatures, plus You Can't See Me and an AA on Logan, only to eat a Claymore upon landing. Priest pulled McIntyre off the cover for a crucifix pinfall, eliminating Drew before Punk even entered. Drew stared angrily at the WrestleMania sign and Claymored Priest, with Paul climbing for a frog splash from atop the pod to eliminate Priest. Let's actually pause here. Super disheartening for me to see Drew eliminated first by Damian, basically telling us, yeah, guys, this is going to be the WrestleMania match. After everything McIntyre has done over the last couple of years, we thought they might pivot to LA Knight because remember how hot that was coming out of Royal Rumble? We thought he might wind up fighting Cody for the title coming out of SmackDown. It wasn't strong that we felt that way, but we thought it was at least a possibility. And at the end, it's McIntyre Priest, which is what it seemed like it was going to be coming out of Royal Rumble. And I cannot be any more disappointed in that. I'm not saying any of it was poorly executed in the match. The wrestling was great, but I want better for McIntyre. It's disappointing for this to be his booking going into the biggest show of the year, especially when better stuff was teased. And he was one of the breakout stars for WWE in 2024. I'm glad he got his crash out moment before exiting. He cost Priest coming back, but McIntyre deserves a lot better than losing to both Usos and getting pinned by Priest in Chamber, leading to a match at WrestleMania. Plain and simple.
Well, I was right in my initial thought that 0% chance of him winning, that he gets eliminated first and everything. Look, I like him. I think he's great. It has just felt to me for a while, they just clearly don't have him kind of penciled in at that level. And had the pandemic not happened, it might be different. But ultimately, it ended up where I thought it was going to be.
I don't know that they don't have him at that level. I think they don't have him at that level when they're fully stocked. When you have Punk and Orton and Cena, like when you have everyone there, and it's fair. He's not a level one guy when all those other dudes are there. But he still deserves better than fighting Damian Priest at WrestleMania. Let's get back to the match. So Punk immediately destroyed Paul once exiting his pod. Rollins interrupted a Cena-Punk stare down. Then he ranted at Cena for interrupting his own attack. Punk countered Buckshot Lariat and hit GTS on Logan for an elimination. Then he mimed digging a grave to bury him. This calmed concerns about Cena Paul, but it kept them alive for Punk Paul, technically. It also gave us a great final three with chants all for Cena and Punk, who teamed up against Rollins, even hitting a heart attack together. Nice homage. Cena offered a handshake. Punk instead hugged him. They started brawling. Punk twice prevented 5 moves of doom. Cena countered GTS into STF, which Punk countered into an Anaconda Vice. Cena rolled through a crossbody for a lifting AA and a kick out. Rollins respawned, hitting consecutive bombs on Cena, first into the cage, then through the plexiglass into a pod. We got GTS pedigree counters with Punk, who stopped the climb-up superplex and hit a flying elbow. Rollins rolled out of GTS into a buckle bomb and then hit stomp for a false finish, which I badly wanted to be the actual fall. Cena took Rollins off the top rope, trying for a super stomp. Rollins escaped AA, but he ate a GTS and then an AA as well in succession to get eliminated. That left Punk and Cena. They shook hands, but this time Punk pulled him in for a GTS and a false finish. Cena immediately rose and hit Punk with an AA for another false finish. Cena tried tugging at Punk's leg. He was in the ropes. He pulled away though, and his body kind of flew through the bottom rope. Rollins, as he was exiting, I think he yelled, "Die, die, die." He stomped Punk's head into the metal grate. Cena recognized the opportunity, grabbed Punk by the leg, dragged him back into the center of the ring, put him in STF, with Punk passing out and Cena advancing to WrestleMania. And even this moment in itself, this is a situation where babyface Cena, like white meat babyface Cena back in the day, if he was going to capitalize, he'd pick him up, do an AA, get the win, or he'd let him rise first and then wrestle him straight up. He wouldn't just go straight into the STF and knock the person out. So this was the first hint that something was up. Chris, this was an excellent chamber match. I wanted Rollins to pin Punk so he could get the de facto victory, because obviously he lost the Raw Netflix debut. That would have evened their Series 1-1. However, getting the hate dub by costing him WrestleMania was just as effective. And it prevented Rollins from losing clean to Cena after the fact, which would have needed to happen. They could have done the inverse with Punk costing Rollins, given he was angry at him coming out of the Royal Rumble anyway. I believe it would have worked just as well. But getting two different portions of Cena and Punk in this match, that was special. And Rollins is going to be around for years to come. Plus, it was executed well. Cena Punk, it's an all-time rivalry. Paying that off with at least these moments on Cena's final run was important. And maybe it even put something together going forward. They put on a clinic together in the ring. And if they do go to that one-on-one match before the year is out, it would be special. It might even be Cena's final match. For that reason, the second half of this chamber will be immensely memorable, with the first half, I would say, rather forgettable, despite it being wrestled well. I'm at 4.5 stars and an A for it. That's not a pure match quality grade. It includes the tugging at the heartstrings with Cena Punk, Rollins' immense involvement, and the way all of it transpired. It was an A match either way, but I did go to the upper level of it.
Here's the thing, like, no chamber match is really memorable. You know, it's weird. It's like, there have been good finishes. There have been a couple of moments.
There's segments of them that are memorable.
For how long this match has been around, they've never figured out how to make it like really good, which is kind of surprising. And that goes for doing the entrances to the chamber, the buzzing and the camera from the top. Like it doesn't hit. Yeah. There's never a pop.
The new sound sucked. The new sound this year sucked. Yeah.
Frankly, what they should do, it should count down and then they just hit somebody's music again. And that's the person who comes out. There's not a connection. And it's been so long and they have not figured out how to make this person's next is like a big deal. They just can't go to do the music, count it down. I know they already did the entrance. Just play the music again for 5 seconds. Crowd reacts, pops to the music because that's what you do. And then they come in and off you go. So that's my recommendation because the finish to this match was really good. A couple, the Cena Punk hug, I'll remember. The rest of it, I'm not going to remember because it's an Elimination Chamber match. And that's just what kind of happens. The finish, I'd forgotten about Seth. That's why that whole bit worked. Me
too. I thought he was out of the ring already. I did too.
He had pinned back, like he'd been pinned like a while ago. Like it wasn't like immediate and that type of deal. So that caught me. I was like, oh, totally forgot he was there. That was good. And then when Punk is in the STF, that's when Rollins is yelling, die, die, die. That was
it was after the stomp. I knew I heard it.
Yeah. And when Cena grabs Punk to put him in, Cole is on commentary saying, desperate Cena, desperate Cena. So like he's trying to sell it as well as like this is Cena wouldn't normally do something like this. I thought they could have sold it a little bit better after the fact. In the moment, there was a lot of focus on Punk and Rollins and less so on Cena going to the main event of WrestleMania. Now, what happened after explains that. But in the moment, I was like, guys, Cena's going to the main event. Why are we not talking about this so much?
Well, because there's two main events. That's why. And the other one involves most likely Punk and Rollins. So they had to give it some time.
Right. Yeah. Right. But in the moment, that's what I'm thinking. Also, I believe this was Cena's first win as a singles wrestler since 2018 is what I looked up. The greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia in April when he beat Triple H. That's so almost a full 7 years.
That's correct, but this isn't even really like it's not a one-on-one win. Like it's not like a
but
it's not a real match.
He had a couple of tag team wins in there.
But I'm saying this is like the kind of equivalent of that. This is the first match he won by himself, but it's not really like a real match. I don't think I said
as a singles wrestler.
As a singles wrestler. Fair enough. Now look, as far as Cena winning goes and what that means, well, normally we would discuss that now. I think it's best for us to talk about it after we break down what transpired next. So Cody and Rock effectively served as the main event of the show. Michael Cole on the pre-show stated that Cody spent part of the week with Rock in Hollywood. And the segment was preceded by what I'm going to call isn't it awesome that Dwayne Johnson is on the board video package? It was basically 90 seconds of fellatio. So Rhodes made his entrance immediately after the pyro ended for Cena. He was actually wearing a black jacket and dark colored suit pieces, selling that he might have actually sold out. Cena was all hyped up with Rhodes calmly shaking his hand, basically saying he was ready for their match. The Rock's music suddenly hit, and it was intermixed with Travis Scott's Fiend. He entered alongside Rock with a drink in hand rather than a blunt. I guess he learned his lesson. Rock wore an almost Elvis-inspired Final Boss vest. He stalked Cody in the ring, cradled his head again, saying he would open his arms and he expects, a embrace as his brother and champion. Rock said he wanted his mind and soul, promising the American Nightmare will live forever. Cena and Scott chilled in the corner watching all of this. Rock said if the answer was no, the dream dies. Again, this got literally zero reaction. I thought it was a fantastic line referring to Dusty. Rhodes said, quote, "I want it all, Rock. My soul no longer belongs to me because I gave my soul to this ring and these people a long time ago." And then Cody said,
Hey, Rock, go fuck yourself. What?
I wanted to play the reaction because it was the loudest pop of the entire night. You also have Cena celebrating wildly in the background. You know when he does the comic celebration, like when he's trying to get a hot tag and he's just trying to rouse the crowd? That's what Cena's doing in the background. Scott, in the background, starts burning something. I thought it was a blunt at first, but I actually think it was sage. I think it's a Hollywood thing, so that's why he was doing it. He was moving it all around his body. Rock looks at Cena in disbelief. Cena comes in. He's proud of Cody. He daps him up, brings him close for a hug. Then he picks his head up and looks at Rock, who puts his hand across his throat, gives Cena a nod. Cena delivers a low blow, then picked up what I thought were brass knuckles, but they were actually the gold Rolex from WrestleMania 40. Beats the shit out of Cody. Then he did a mic shot to the top of the head, which was kind of less impactful, before running through Cody with the WWE title. Rhodes bladed, and he rose, so Cena ran through him with the title again. Scott and Cena then held Rhodes down as Rock whipped him with the weight belt. Scott threw a haymaker that wound up giving Cody a black and blue, like right on his forehead. Apology is owed there, by the way, from Travis. This whole thing ended with Cena's foot on the back of Rhodes' head, standing side by side with The Rock, before Dwayne again wiped Cody's blood on the weight belt and gave him one more lash for good measure. The entire commentary booth wound up helping Cody out of the ring as Joe Tessitore solemnly took the mic to start the post-show. That is how Elimination Chamber ended and transitioned into that post-show segment. I'm not even sure where to start, Chris. An uncensored fuck from Cody, a Cena heel turn we've been awaiting for 2 decades. Travis Scott, love him or hate him, being a minimal yet contributing factor to the segment, which will expand the reach of this 5 to 10-fold. The camera work on this was also straight up tremendous, but I hate to say it because we use the word occasionally here on the show, Chris. That fuck was legendary.
Is that the first one said on WWE television on purpose?
It's the
not censored, not like that's like part of the deal. It's like they've been bleeped out before. I'm pretty sure the crazy thing is I'm pretty sure they bleeped some "F you Logan" chants.
They did on the same
chamber
show
match.
Yeah, they did.
Right. So I don't get it. We can stop saying it on the show because I know there are people who listen with their kids, and I imagine there's some people with kids who are not happy.
I mean, they saw the
it,
segment, but their kids watched the segment, I bet.
Right. And so that was shocking.
Well, I'll tell you,
shocking as anything.
We'll get the explicit tag on this episode. That's unquestioned. I believe you are correct. There's definitely been other occasions in WWE in which the F word was written into the script to be said. But I believe every single time it was either censored or meant to be censored. Maybe they barely missed it or something like that. This was the first one where it was known to be coming, and they definitely did not censor it on purpose because they wanted the impact to land. There's no question.
I'm pretty sure the Rock has used it even last year, and it got bleeped out.
Oh, he said it a bunch.
So
yeah, of course. Yeah. He said it on NXT this year in January. Yeah, absolutely.
And for it to come from Cody, like the babyface, too. Like, that's crazy.
The white me babyface. That's why it's incredible. Here's what's so amazing about all of this, Chris, and you kind of teased it earlier in the show. We spent a lot of time over the last week plus discussing the mechanics and logic behind a Cena heel turn. And our conclusion was that it would be incredible and it would be the ultimate payoff of this storyline to bring it full circle and have it actually make sense. And yet, we also cautioned about getting overly excited about the prospect of it so as not to lead to unfair disappointment, right? Because it's one thing to not like something that happens on WWE television. It's another not to like it because it didn't go your way or by the fantasy booking that you created in your head. And yet, in this case, we got exactly what we prognosticated. And it was honestly so much better than I even could have envisioned.
But I want you to know this. I prayed for this and it happened.
What's hysterical about the timing of all of this? The fans were finally 100% behind Cena as a super babyface for the first time during a full-time stretch in like a decade. And this is the opportunity that they used to turn him heel. You cannot beat that. Again, we previously noted why WWE is so comfortable and confident having Cody in this new Cena role. They can take risks with the old Cena, especially now involving Cody. As much as we have all wanted this, there was always that sneaking part inside me that just doubted WWE would ever actually go through with it. Well, they did, and then some. Cena turning heel was one thing. Doing it at the exact direction of Rock, with it clear they had planned the outcome if Rhodes turned him down, it sets up this story perfectly. Rock and Cena wanted Rhodes to join them in Hollywood greatness. They knew that they would have to take it into their own hands if he chose otherwise, and that he most likely would. And Cena did it to get his 17th reign because it's best for business, as he alluded to and we pointed out after the Royal Rumble. What really sold this for me, though, were John's mannerisms and facial expressions. The evil look in his eyes and his face dropping during that hug was top tier. It was like Bucky Barnes when he gets activated into Winter Soldier. That's the best comparison I can possibly make. His acting was completely on point, and the devastation of the attack, not just a low blow and a belt shot, but the Rolex punches, multiple belt shots, the blading, the weight belt lashing, all of it combined into a single package that made for an immensely memorable scene. The only down part of it was the Toronto crowd, which did not live up to the moment at all. And this should be a lesson for WWE, not to do the top tier of their shows anywhere else in Canada other than Montreal. But I digress. We have Hollywood Cena in the year of our Lord 2025. And yes, this is the modern day Bash at the Beach heel turn with Hollywood Hogan and the NWO. That remains untouched as a better moment, apples to apples, and no one ever predicted that was going to happen. This will absolutely go down, though, Chris, in history books in its own right. And don't forget, this all happened in Toronto, the same market where Cena returned last year. This is going to be an incredible Mania feud with Cody face and John heel, and it's going to make Rhodes an absolute megastar, even more so when it's all over. But the highlight of all of this was John frickin' Cena. He nailed this. 10 out of 10, A+ for John.
Tell you, Cody's going to get those Instagram followers anyway.
Yes, he is.
By turning him down. Cena even did a Make-A-Wish before the show.
That's incredible.
Like, there's a clip that's out there, and yeah, it's all because obviously they trust Cody. Cody is the guy who can carry the company, and you can turn John Cena heel because Cody can be that guy. There were a couple things that happened earlier in the show that I didn't quite get that then made more sense when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was,
I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
One of them was Cena acting like normal jokey John Cena in the match. It was like he was the whole, I'm always going to remember the John Cena heel turn really kind of started at that press conference where I was supposed to ask him a question and then I didn't get to ask him a question. And so I was expecting Cena would come back like that dead serious Cena. Like we're like, oh, this is a Cena we want to see.
Right.
But he was back to being regular John Cena again. And I was like, well, okay. And then he wins. And I was like, all right, like Cena, Cody, maybe we'll get the heel turn later. We'll see where this goes. But when Cody came out right away and we knew Cena was staying out there,
mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, they might actually do this here instead of, because we didn't get it perfectly right. We had surmised they would do it at WrestleMania maybe a guest
You had
referee
surmised they
Rock.
would do it at WrestleMania.
Yeah,
I
it would
didn't.
be a WrestleMania 17 type of thing.
Yeah.
That was my thought process. So when he's coming out, I was like, oh, we're doing this now with them. This might happen now. Like maybe I'm getting too far out of myself, but if they're going to do it, this would be the place to do it. So everything about it was great. Cena was properly vicious, man. The belt shot. I don't know if Cody bladed or not. He probably did, but one of the belt shots, you could hear it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When it hit Cody's head. Like he was properly destructive the way you want to be, not just doing wrestling moves to him and stuff. You hit him with the watch, you hit him with the mic, you hit him with the belt, you rip the shirt off, you choke him with the tie, like everything. It's exactly what you wanted to see. And it might be really weird as we look back on it in 20 years and see Travis Scott just like hanging out in the ring, you know? But ultimately you got the shots you wanted of Rock and Cena together without Travis Scott. You do your 2-man tag team deal, whatever you want to call it. I like Break-A-Wish Foundation. And I have some other thoughts on what this will mean for Mania, but this was everything we'd hoped it would be, going back to the Firefly Funhouse match when Cena teased the heel turn there, and he's talked about it. And the next 49 days could be incredible. Like we loved what we got from The Rock last year, from post Rumble to Mania.
We loved it from the WrestleMania kickoff until WrestleMania.
Yeah. And so now you can have Cena involved in that too here. Like there are so many really cool things they could do.
It's also having the odds immensely stacked against Cody. I mean, you have to remember last year, he ended up in a Bloodline rules match, right? Because they lost the tag team match on night 1, and he was fighting the entire Bloodline with Rock, and we saw the Avengers Assemble type of moment. You could argue this is even more insurmountable odds. It's Rock and Cena. It's the two guys. Like these guys main evented WrestleMania together twice, and now they're probably going to be involved in the same match. You got to assume Rock is either going to be a special guest referee or ringside enforcer, something like that.
Well, that's the thing. We don't, as of right now, we just know it's a match. So technically, right now, he's not facing any insurmountable odds. He's got 50-50 odds because it's a one-on-one match.
Well,
but yes, that's why I'm excited. That's why I'm excited to see how do they then start to stack the odds against Cody. That will be interesting.
I mean, they're absolutely going to do it. And you said something interesting that Cena went all the way. Unlike in Tropic Thunder, right, when they say you never go full R word, if you're Cena, in this case, you have to go full heel. Like, there is no half-assing it. He had to do what he did the way he did it. Otherwise, it would have come across as hollow. Like, if he just did a low blow and then Rock beat the shit out of him, that doesn't feel the same way. It has to be Cena who gets the heat on him. He's the one that's opposing Cody in this match. He absolutely excelled doing that.
Someone sent me the Chappelle Show clip of him playing the sick kid in the hospital in the video game. It's like, that's exactly what we need Cena to do. We need to start going after the sick kids and stuff like that. Like really sell it.
Yeah, there's no question. It was just straight up immense. And we've said before on this show that one phase of Paul Levesque's booking that has severely lacked over the last couple of years is the surprise factor. Like he has said, sometimes predictable things are good, which was always funny because it's things that we used to say on this podcast. It's a phrase we used to use on this show. And his booking had been immensely predictable, particularly going into WrestleMania 40, where you could predict almost every match that was going to happen and almost every result. And it was fine because those were all the results you wanted and needed. This WrestleMania season, and we talked about this early in January, we discussed it again after the Royal Rumble, it has been unpredictable. But between Cena and what happened in the Women's Elimination Chamber match, we had two explosive moments with major ramifications in one show. And they both added significant fire to the road to WrestleMania. And Paul Levesque actually addressed that on the post-show press conference. He pointed out the extra few weeks forced WWE to delay truly lighting the fuse. That's something we also talked about, I think this past Tuesday, maybe even the week prior on the show, saying, yeah, it doesn't really feel like we're on the road to WrestleMania yet. But the reason was because Elimination Chamber was clearly going to be such a big show. So they delivered that. And they, looking back on it, gave, they're allowed some grace for the end of the Royal Rumble and the couple weeks that succeeded that not being as on absolute fire as it normally is on the road to WrestleMania.
But to be clear, this being an awesome moment and night does not mean last week didn't suck.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
Because it did.
I was going to ask you that. Wait, let me pose you a question, okay? What I was going to say is, do we owe The Rock an apology? I was going to say no, but I wanted you to pontificate on it first.
No, but I think maybe I owe you an apology because you believe the concept was there, the execution wasn't. I just couldn't totally buy the concept, and they ultimately got there. I still think it would have been better if you just say Cody joined the dark side type of thing. Like you didn't have to
It's not even dark side
telling us how you're friends. I'm just saying it was unnecessarily convoluted, and then they didn't even tell you what the offer was.
Right.
It wasn't until Michael Cole on SmackDown told you what the offer was. If we could have talked for a week, like, man, Cody does have a really tough schedule. Man, his wife doesn't come with him on the road anymore, and the kid and all that stuff. Like, that must be pretty, like, there was a story there that we just didn't tell. And ultimately it didn't matter because we knew Cody wasn't going to join The Rock, but they still blew it last week.
Well, don't forget, they did start telling the story. They did start telling the story. They had CM Punk out there saying, hey, this title's become a burden for you. And Kevin Owens talked about it a little bit as well ahead of their feud. So they were kind of planting the seeds for this. But the problem was, and this is why we do not owe The Rock an apology, his promo sucked 8 days ago. Like, it just did. The segment wasn't good because he should have gone out there and he should have said, I want you to be my champion and I want to be your mentor both in WWE and Hollywood. I want you to join me and align with me. Instead, he got into the whole sell your soul thing and the friendship and all the convolution that completely watered down what this was supposed to be. And it took WWE pretty much spending the better part of 6 hours of television on it. I mean, that's probably an exaggeration, but let's say spending 60 to 90 minutes of television on it across Raw and SmackDown to repair the storyline because Dwayne delivered it so poorly initially on SmackDown. So even though Elimination Chamber was incredible and the payoff of this was immense, it does not change whatsoever my opinion on Rock's promo Friday night a week ago coming out of SmackDown, what we discussed that night, what we discussed on our Tuesday episode. It was poor.
But I do believe obviously that this was the plan all along, unlike last year when they
this was definitely the plan all along. There's not even a question about that. And, I will Barry Horowitz because you mentioned it. It's what I said. The concept was clearly there. It was just the content of it, the way that it transpired, that was such a struggle. But they got there in the end. Now we're on the road to WrestleMania 41. It is on straight fire. And guess what happened now? We can't wait to find out what WWE does this coming Monday on Raw, which is exactly the way it needs to be. Do you have anything else on Cena, Cody, Rock, anything else in the men's elimination chamber, or should we move on to the rest of the card?
I think that's everything I have.
Let's put a pin in it now. Just a reminder for everyone, our next WWE episode will be on Tuesday. We'll take a second look at Elimination Chamber. We will almost certainly have some additional thoughts on Rock, Cody, and Cena. And for all of you, and I see them now, I'm looking at Twitter and Blue Sky, all of you who sent in tweets and DMs, questions and comments for the show, we will get to them on Tuesday. You know how we do. We have to do it instant analysis style here. We don't have the time to go through all the questions and comments. We will hit you on Tuesday, answer your questions, and maybe more of them will come after Raw, so be sure to send them all in, Jerome's. Let's move to the Women's Elimination Chamber. Liv Morgan, Bianca Belair, Naomi Bailey, Alexa Bliss, and Roxanne Perez. Bailey, Bianca, and Naomi fought Liv, Raquel Rodriguez, and Roxanne on SmackDown. This was built through an attack on that kickoff show. Perez was multiple times referred to as an NXT superstar. Bailey looked like an MVP early, almost like this chick actually got to rest and refresh herself after going crazy for a month. Bianca then went wild with a great hot tag. Naomi hit Raquel with Heatseeker, only for Rodriguez to respawn basically right away. That move should at least result in a pin attempt first. Naomi eliminated her with a Hurricanrana before Bailey avoided and then ate Pop Rocks after Perez took out her knee for a squeaky clean win for the neophyte. Bliss emerged as Perez celebrated, hit her with the Abigail DDT. She looked a bit darker attire-wise than we last saw her. There was also a Wyatt 6 flash on the screen when the segment ended, and Joe Tessitore had a great line. He said there were 5, and the 6th likes to do things on her own terms. So Alexa's not only the 6th, but also Wyatt 6, which really works. Glad that she got a moment in at the end here. It was not jammed into the match. It was fun. The crowd did not give a shit. Totally on them because everyone worked their asses off. I presumed Bayley would pin Roxy in the chamber coming out of this. That's where my mind was. What'd you think, Chris?
My only thought coming out of this, I love the way Roxanne sold trying to get out of the Sister Abigail DDT. Like so many times, Alexa or even Brad Wyatt, you put them down and then they just kind of go limp or they don't really move.
Yeah, they go like
but theoretically, they're not knocked out or anything. And so Roxanne was like struggling to try to get out of it and then hits the move and sells it great. It's like a little thing that added so much, and everybody should sell that position like that. So that was really great stuff from Roxanne.
It was so much better. And by the way, Bliss using this move as opposed to her old finishers, the punch to the face and the regular DDT that used to end matches, it is so much more believable as a finisher. So I like the move.
It's also better than Bray Wyatt's Sister Abigail, to be honest. It's more impactful.
It is, but it's longer to set up though.
It is.
It is. So this match opened the show, Chamber. Liv and Naomi started, but immediately after the bell, Jade Cargill's music hit. She stormed into the structure, appeared headed on a beeline toward Liv, only to turn to the left and absolutely destroy Naomi. Like she brutalized this woman. Bianca went crazy, crying and such. She was stuck in her pod. She was basically having a total nervous breakdown. Naomi tried crawling out, only for Jade to absolutely end her life, closing her head in the door opening. Morgan taunted Belair in the pod. As it was announced, Naomi's effectively eliminated from the match. Chris, this was simply exceptional. One of the best starts to a PLE that I can remember, and it was an absolutely brutal beating that gave Jade so much, I hate using this word, so much aura upon her return. She wore all black. She went after Naomi like a total badass. She murked her. It made for an incredible spectacle. It was a super hot start to the show. It also created a legitimate question. Did Naomi attack her? Or is Jade angry that she took her spot? If this was getting its own grade, it would be 5 stars, A+.
Yeah, it was great. Jade looked awesome. It was good pop and a proper beatdown. And like, yes, obviously, it's going to be clear that Naomi was the one who injured Jade, which was my guess all along. You had Liv as Jade's walking in the ring. Liv's like, it wasn't me. And so it was Naomi.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have to explain that. I'm sure Jade will say it or Naomi will say, yes, I did it. But it's also a little interesting because like the presumed heel here will have already gotten her pre-comeuppance, Like Jade already beat up Naomi for what happened. Like, where do you go from there? You do a match?
Well, that's why I'm saying you're making the assumption that Naomi actually did it, just like in kayfabe they made the assumption that Liv and Raquel did it. It's quite possible that Jade is assuming Naomi attacked her because she took her spot, had a title run with Bianca, and so on. Now, maybe Naomi did it, and that certainly would make a lot of sense. It'd be easy, cut and dry to just do it that way. It's also possible that it was someone completely different. Let's say like Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson from NXT. I know that you're going to say, oh, no one knows who they are. I understand that. It could have been Roxanne Perez. It could have been whomever who did it to her, but she's taking it out on Naomi because she feels like she took her spot and took advantage of her absence.
But that makes Jade a heel then at that point.
I know. Yes, it does. Naomi, exactly.
Then Jade becomes the heel.
She does. And what did she do? She came out wearing all black.
It would be a little more confusing, I think.
It depends what the story is.
In that moment. Yeah. And I could see the moment. Naomi saying, it was me, cut some promo, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can still do it. But it was so unlike anything we've ever seen, It
was.
Rikishi saying I did it for The Rock and everything, when he hit the Stone Cold with the car, like there was the mystery, and then you learn the mystery, and then you do the angle. Kind of did the angle beforehand, which is just, again, it's interesting. It hasn't been done.
Don't forget,
I am curious to see what happens.
We're also led to assume that Bianca's reaction is because she doesn't understand why her friends are fighting, that she's been in the dark about this entire deal. She could just be reacting because Naomi's her best friend and she's getting her ass kicked and she can't help her. She could have been in on it also. It's very possible. So
yeah, I wouldn't go.
I'm just saying there's so many different levels for this.
Yes, but then considering how the way the women's chamber ended, I don't think that's the case.
I don't think so either, but I mean, we'll get to it in a second, but you need a heel, and right now there isn't one, so it's interesting. So with Naomi getting stretchered out, Belair's pod...
By the way, getting stretchered out, and then the ring announcer says, Naomi's been eliminated. It was funny to I know it's the Elimination Chamber, but to use the word eliminated was I thought it was very funny.
They should have done since Naomi's been compromised to a permanent end, she has been eliminated from this match. So Belair's pod opened first with her selling the emotional toll of everything. Perez had a great counter sequence with Belair on the platform, ending with a Russian leg sweep into the grate. She also took Bayley off the ropes with a powerbomb into the platform and hit a tadpole splash. Bliss entered last. She had her tribute gear again. Without any real eliminations having happened, Bayley had a great tope suicida style basement crossbody. Roxy locked a crossface on Bayley with them rolling all the way into the chains from the middle of the ring. Then she had a draping DDT only for Bayley to get knees up on a double jump moonsault. Perez avoided Rose Plant, but as Bayley threw her outside, Morgan hit Oblivion for the pinfall. Liv and Bianca climbed a pod where Belair whipped her with the braid before hitting a huge double crossbody. There was a fantastic multiple counter spot that followed where it looked like Perez would pin Belair, but instead, Alexa hit Twisted Bliss to eliminate Roxy. Liv stupidly caught a KOD of Bliss, eating a Hurricane instead of just letting her take the KOD and getting pinned. Morgan hit 3 Amigos on Belair, and it was here I realized that her top, the shirt she was wearing, had the rib cage similar to what Dominic wears. Morgan escaped Abigail DDT and KOD successively. Then she avoided a roll-through cover and pinned Bliss with a jackknife cover. This after Belair ate an Abigail DDT and was knocked out cold. Liv covered for a false finish, then did a cool spot where she bounced Bianca between the ropes and the cage multiple times. She added a wicked codebreaker, but Belair no-sold it with a spear. Bianca swung Liv between the plexiglass and the grating before powerbombing her over the ropes. Morgan got knees up on the ensuing 450, but Belair stopped Oblivion cold. Morgan avoided KOD hitting a codebreaker, but Belair just stood up, intercepted Oblivion on the ropes, hit KOD, got the win, and advanced to WrestleMania. And then Rhea Ripley and Io Sky both entered to confront Belair as she was celebrating on the stage. This was an extremely strong chamber match, bell to bell, that did not receive the crowd response it deserved. Part of the issue is that the hottest moment came 5 seconds into the match, but Toronto, again, just proved to be a far inferior crowd. The final sequence between Belair and Morgan was excellent. I'm glad they got time to put on a mini match and they didn't go straight into the finish like we see so often. Bliss had her best night of wrestling in a long time, even prior to her injury layoff. Roxy surely earned some new fans with her performance. Bayley was a ring general as usual, but she really wasn't meant to be a significant part of the match. I'm surprised she didn't get the pinfall back over Roxy. It made so much sense to do it, and they just didn't. Bianca was her normal, awesome self, but turned up to 12. The lack of selling really bothered me. It was actually kind of ridiculous. Liv was the MVP of this match, and she has pole position right now for Women's Wrestler of the Year after just 2 months. She went the distance in Chamber and also started Royal Rumble, set a time record. It did not necessarily stand out to me as the best Women's Chamber ever, but it certainly lived up to expectations. It probably exceeded them. There just weren't any immensely memorable moments outside of Jade. 4 stars, A-. Maybe I'm a little bit short. I'll rewatch it, but that's my grade.
Because again, there aren't memorable chamber matches on the whole because they're just inherently kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
I think the spot from this I'll remember the most is Liv bouncing Bianca off the side of the cage and the ropes and pulling her back with the hair. That was such a cool creative thing that I haven't seen before. So I thought that was great. She had a gigantic, welt or cut on her stomach from the hair whip, which I still, honestly, one of the most painful things in wrestling.
It has to be.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
We saw it on Sasha. We saw it on Becky. We saw it here. Man, that is something that does not go away for a little bit. So I thought it was solid, enjoyable. I was ultimately right. I picked Bianca. You picked Liv.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was good. Match was good. I guess if we talk about kind of Rhea and Io and that whole thing, my guess is we're going to be doing triple threat here.
Yeah,
because they have emphasized the Io part of this,
which is appropriate though.
to hold this after Chamber to during the announcement, say the winner fights Rhea Ripley or Io Sky, to Io coming out post match. I was like, all right, I don't look. I made the case that Bianca should win this because you gotta kind of get going on Rhea Bianca before it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
But you do a triple threat, you can say, hey, we can still hold the one-on-one for a main event. A WrestleMania main event is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've made the case for Io for months now, and whether it was a triple threat with Liv or a triple threat with Bianca, it makes all the sense in the world. As far as the outcome of the match, Belair winning and advancing, we properly narrowed it down to her and Morgan, and I will say it felt like Liv actually had more fans behind her in the latter stages of this match. Obviously, with her being women's tag team champion, the odds became longer that she would win. And as you pointed out just now and previously, the first main roster match between Ripley and Belair, it does need to happen sooner than later in order to build the match, which should main event one of the nights of WrestleMania. But the question remains, as you just posed, whether they fight one-on-one or do the triple threat with Io. You really cannot go wrong with either option. An all-star triple threat with all three of them, that does remain my expectation coming out of Raw on Monday night. And that shit would feed families if they do it. But if it winds up one-on-one, it's going to be their third TV match in history and the first since NXT TakeOver Portland, which was right before the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, 5 years ago. So their first ever on the main roster. And that's massive as well.
It'll feed villages.
I guess the question is going to be, do they go with the first of, let's say, a 3-match series that perhaps transpires over like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, WrestleMania 42, just as one example? Or do they go triple threat here and one of them pins Io, right, which would be the expectation, and then you spend the remainder of 2025 into 2026 finally building up, because now you've seen them in the ring together, but you haven't seen them one-on-one, building up Ripley Belair night one main event of WrestleMania 42, because that is the match in WWE. I mean, look, I love Io Sky. There's amazing women up and down the card. Liv is doing incredible work right now. Obviously, Stephanie Vaquer and Julia and Jordan Grace and Roxanne Perez. Becky Lynch is still around. Charlotte Flair exists if you are a huge fan of her. Tiffany Stratton, like you can keep going on and on and on. There's a ton of women's main events that are possible for WWE. But the one that needs to happen is Ripley Belair at WrestleMania. Like it is the freaking match right now. It's the, I was going to say Roman Reigns, John Cena, but they're contemporaries. So that's really not a perfect comparison. It's the Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins to a degree, just without the, personal story. So that has to go down. The question is just going to be, is it this year on 49 days build, or do they actually game plan this out for 42 or beyond? I actually believe, despite you making a really strong case, that get the first match out of the way, then build to the next one. And that's legit. I'm not going to be angry if they do that. I would prefer a triple threat. I want a big one-shot match. Ripley, Belair, the ultimate match. Do it, and then you can always go back to it later.
So I do believe it's going to be a triple threat. I don't want it to be. I think Io Sky is a great wrestler. I don't really care much for her as a character. And I think Rhea Bianca is just bigger. Mm-hmm. And my brother texted me right after Bianca wins, because him and I had been talking about this. And he says, like, you need to build a big story for Rhea Bianca the first time. And my response was, literally right after the match was, no, you don't. Put them face to face. That's all you got to do. That'll sell you everything. And what do we have? We have Bianca walk down the ramp, and there's Rhea, and you're like, oh man. And you're like looking at it, and you're like, hey, yeah, you don't need to sell anything like that. Like that is it right there. And then Io walked out, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess we're going to be doing the triple threat instead. So I don't think you don't need to make Rhea Bianca perfect. In fact, I'd argue that the more swings you take, the better chance you have of getting it right and not putting too much pressure on a single match being perfect, so to speak. So ultimately, I don't think that'll happen. I think we will get the triple threat, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and I've laid out the case for the triple threat previously on the podcast. They've been telling a really solid Rhea and Io's story. I'm not saying it's like transcendent or anything, but it would make sense as a way to get her into this match without winning Royal Rumble and without winning Elimination Chamber. Does make sense if they put her in here. Let's move to Sami Zayn against Kevin Owens in an unsanctioned match. Zayn addressed Owens on SmackDown, invited him into the ring, not out of respect for him, but their history. He said they can say their final words because there will be nothing left to say afterward. Owens answered live from Rogers Center, saying it would be the biggest match of their rivalry. KO refused to be painted as the bad guy before promising to end Sami's career and confine him to a wheelchair. Owens said he'd refuse to help his family in that case. He'd be happy to watch the Zaynes, I guess, suffer. Zayn admitted he's been nervous all week about what he's going to do to Owens, nervous that KO's family will never forgive him when he ends Owens for good. I get what they were going for here, but not having Owens and Zayn live face-to-face, not getting that kind of aggression in the middle of the ring, let alone not doing a brawl or something, it was simply weaker than the alternative, which is what we got. I'm not suggesting it was bad. You could feel the tension and the drama and how personal it was for both guys. But some of that gets lost in transition naturally through video. And that's the way I kind of felt about this segment.
It would have been better if they had already had a face-to-face and this is the final thing to say. There's nothing left to say. But I don't know if Kevin Owens is going to promo in front of the crowd in 2025. Like, everything's a video.
Yeah.
And then we had this. And it's like, if this is your big blow-off, like, there's no opportunity. There are no opportunities for Kevin Owens to interact with the crowd here and for them to really boo him because he's there and they want to boo him. And I don't understand it. It's been going on for months that we barely ever get Kevin Owens cutting promos in the ring when he's maybe the best guy in the company at doing it. So, like, it was fine, but I was like, man, really? We're going into the match and we never had a face-to-face in front of the crowd? Like, ugh.
I mean, they've explained it pretty solidly from the standpoint that, like, WWE is banning him from the building. They don't respect him, so he doesn't respect them by showing up, so he just sends in promos. Like, they've made it make sense, but naturally.
But that's them doing that. They didn't have to do that.
No, of course. That's not, but naturally, that's going to have less impact than it would otherwise. Like, especially when they have him in the arena. Like, it'd be one thing if they said, hey, KO, you deserve some time off, cut promos from home, like, we'll just make it work. But a lot of the times he does one of those, he's still in the arena for the show and he still does something else. He attacks or whatever the case might be. So it is missed opportunities, or they are missed opportunities to have him generate additional heat. It ended up not mattering that much, but it would have made the build hotter. So let's go talk about the match. This was the third of 4 of the show, really 5 segments before matches. There was an extended explanation about the unsanctioned nature of the bout. I believe Cole also killed kayfabe of El Generico and Sami being different people during the intro. I think he said, like, this match has happened before when they were known as Kevin Steen and El Generico, which was massively disappointing if I heard that correctly. The referee wore a regular black t-shirt. The lights were pulled down with just a spotlight in the middle of the ring. And the WWE logos on the turnbuckles were all covered, although you could see the logo everywhere else. I thought there were some nice touches to make it feel different. Owens wore Zayn out with a chair early before it ricocheted off the ropes into his face. Sami beat him with a hockey stick. KO choked him with the stick and then bit him on the head. Double stacked tables were set up between the ring post and the timekeeper's area. During a crowd brawl, Sami hit consecutive blue thunder bombs through tables. Owens answered with ring bell and monitor shots, jostling on the top rope with Sami. Zayn avoided a fisherman's buster only to get pushed backwards through the stacked tables. Owens added a pump handle cradle brain buster through an opened steel chair for a false finish. Zayn answered with 2 half-and-half suplexes, one through the still open chair, which was insane. KO used the referee as a shield to avoid Haluva kick. He had a stunner with no one to count. He eventually got a delayed 2.9 from Charles Robinson, whom he decided to decapitate with a lariat as retribution. Lil Nate taking a bump. Owens put Zayn on a table. Sami threw the chair placed atop his body into KO's head. Owens nevertheless hit a fisherman's buster through the table for a 2.9 shoulder raise. WWE officials tried to get KO to stop, but he propped Sami in the corner. He ran backwards to run back at him, but Sami chased him, caught him with a Haluva kick for a false finish. Zayn grabbed a barbed wire chair for 2 back shots. Then he opened it for a drop toe hold and placed it between 2 open chairs for a blue thunderbomb into the barbed wire chair. And that got a false finish. Owens countered Helluva Kick with a pop-up powerbomb. Zayn rolled outside, selling his neck. KO put a chair around Sammy's neck and twice ran him into the ring post before hitting the apron pop-up powerbomb. They botched a redo of it, so Owens lifted Zayn again for a second real, third overall apron powerbomb. He rolled Zayn back into the ring for the clear 1-2-3 and the much-needed victory. The ending featured tons of WWE officials and security trying to get Owens to stop the match well before the finish actually came. Commentary sold the bout as over well before the final bell rang. They were really selling the devastation and violence that Owens was putting on Zayn. You know, the deliberate pace of this match, it was striking to me. I wouldn't have expected a couple 40-year-olds to go faster, but the way it was wrestled, it made every strike feel more impactful and every sequence feel more dramatic. The crowd, which was certainly not red hot like it would have been in Montreal, nevertheless hung on every moment and responded accordingly. So many parts of the match stood out, but believe it or not, man, the drop toe hold of all things that KO took full force with the side of his head into that barbed wire chair, that was a holy shit moment for me. And the finishing sequence with 4 total pop-up power bombs, 2.5 of them into the ring apron, plus 2 chair ring post spots, that really put over Owens' violence. Perhaps most intriguing was the connotation of violence and devastation was fully realized in the match without an ounce of blood being spilled. I saw some people wished it had been, and I would have been fine if that was the case because WWE had not done blood since Hell in a Cell. It certainly would have been appropriate here. Maybe Owens could have bladed. Like, I don't think Sammy should have. But to me, I didn't need it to enjoy the match. And if what I hope actually happens, we'll talk about that in a moment, maybe they're saving it. Plus, we got Cody bloody at the end of the show. Maybe WWE felt it was unnecessary to do it twice. Cole was phenomenal here. He definitely harkened some old school Jim Ross in his call. Look, the Rolling Stones say you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. Here, Chris, we got what we wanted and we got what we needed. 4.5 stars. I lost the time. I think it was like 25, 27 minutes. This was incredible.
Yes, it was fantastic. And as someone who was criticizing the unsanctioned idea and how it works in kayfabe, they really leaned into that.
They did the best
with
they
a
could
lot of this
in WWE.
Yes,
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. Having a referee not wearing the referee shirt and explaining that, like, okay, they're like saying WWE's not held responsible. Okay, I'm getting that. The lighting, I didn't like it at first. I was like, this feels too gimmicky. It's making me think of Red Light for The Fiend. But as it went on, I got used to it and thought, you know what? This makes it feel different. And that's how this match should feel. So I ultimately came around and didn't have a problem with the lights. Match was fantastic, as you know you're going to get between these two guys. You texted me after the match and said, perfect. And I said, except for one thing, and I didn't tell you what it was.
Hit me.
That one thing was the blood.
Mm.
And again, at the time, we didn't know Cody was going to end the night bloodied. That may have been one reason. But when you're bringing in barbed wire and you've got Kevin Owens going face first into it, that's the moment I feel like you need blood. If this is supposed to be the big send-off, which we don't know for sure, but it was presented as such, it felt like that should have been a moment for blood. And I think it would have been the one thing that completely put it over the top as totally epic.
I mean, you're taking a headshot into barbed wire. If you're going to bleed, like, that's when you bleed.
Yeah, right. And because they leaned into the violence of this in a way that WWE does not do very often. Hell in a Cell, CM Punk McIntyre was the first time in like a really long time.
Yeah.
Like the violence was the story. And this was a case where the violence was the story.
They just didn't really get into the whole, like, I want to maim you. You know, there's two different types of like hardcore matches. There's one where someone takes a wrench and hits you in the head, right? Or a barbed wire bat and they rake it across your face. And then there's others where they just do power moves into objects. That's what this was. It was blue thunder bombs and power bombs and brain busters into tables and chairs and stuff like that. And those really shouldn't make you bleed, at least to the same level that using a wrench to someone's forehead should, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I'm saying, like, it was literally only the drop toe hold into the chair where I said,
Yeah.
how is he not bleeding after this? Also, the Blue Thunder Bomb into that same chair, but the guy's wearing a t-shirt. So I'd be a black t-shirt at that. So it would be understandable to not see blood there. But maybe he did gig himself. There's sometimes that these guys can blade and it doesn't actually, they don't go deep enough. It doesn't work, whatever the case. It's possible he did it on the drop toe hold, but that was the only moment where I said, it could have had blood, but I don't think it ruined the match or lessened my enjoyment necessarily.
No. Pulling out the barbed wire chair, isn't it? When that happened, when Sammy did that, my first thought was, why did Kevin Owens do that? He clearly knows. Like, did he not put the barbed wire chair under?
So the kayfabe explanation, I've heard William Regal talk about this before. The kayfabe explanation is that these guys come up with their own, devilishly gimmicked props that they want to use. I'm calling them props, weapons that they want to use in these matches. It's kayfabe. The weapons that they want to use, and they give them to like the stagehands to hide them under certain parts of the ring, so only they know where they are. That's the explanation.
But I was like, man, Kevin Owens should have thought of that. That was way more of a thing. But Sammy fought well. I did think it was funny. Cole was properly disgusted several times with what happened, but it was very funny. He delivers the line, "You sick bastard," after an apron powerbomb, a wrestling move.
Right.
Like that's the one where it's like he's allowed to do that. Like So
that's fair, but you do know the history of that move in their feud.
Yes, I know the history of the NXT and everything.
Okay.
It's just, it's funny. Like that's the moment he decides to call him a sick bastard, not all the barbed wire stuff that we just kind of went through prior. I just thought it was kind of funny, but in that moment when you've got all the backstage people coming out and trying to stop it, they know they shouldn't do that, and I know they generally understood they kind of had to stay out of it because it is unsanctioned, and they made that point that WWE cannot be held liable for what happened. So that kind of added to all of it. But I had a thought to myself, when the referee runs out, when Lil Nate runs out with the WWE ref shirt on, does that suddenly make it sanctioned because there's an official referee doing things instead of the unsanctioned referee? So it was just
it's actually interesting because those guys didn't wind up mattering. So they could have really just done it where there was no one else to count because that was the designated referee for the match. And all the other officials were told you can't come out there. What I would have really liked is if all the people who ran to the ring to try to stop KO in the latter stages were faces that are known. So they're all the former wrestlers who are producers and backstage, like Petey Williams and Jason Jordan and Bobby Roode and all of those guys. So they're not the security because it's unsanctioned. So the security really shouldn't be out there. They're not the referees because WWE doesn't have a part in this match. It's all the guys who are working with WWE in official capacities, but they're out there because they're wrestlers. And they don't want to see two guys that they knew on the independents that they've known for, 20, 30 years get seriously hurt. I wish they had just thought through the people that came out a little bit more. I think it would have made it more impactful that KO was doing something that defied even the base level of decorum in professional wrestling by going at Sammy this way, attacking his neck in that manner. But I mean, it still worked. Don't get it twisted. This was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say this too. So the booking for me coming out of this, the way WWE should move this forward, okay? It starts with Sammy missing WrestleMania entirely and getting a few months off. Selling the neck injury is legitimately serious. I would not bring him back. I don't know when the Blood Money in the Sand show is going to be, but if it's shortly after WrestleMania, I wouldn't bring him back until that. They need him to promote it because he's Muslim. But have him miss multiple months, sell the neck injury as legitimately serious. Maybe even do vignettes like they did with Shawn Michaels in his back, back in the day, where it's he's getting all these x-rays and MRIs and there's a legitimate shot this guy never wrestles again. Then when he returns, he starts at the bottom and he builds his way up. And eventually in late 2025 or 2026, ideally against Owens in a show in Montreal, he wins the championship, the world championship. That should unquestionably be what they do with Sammy and KO over the next year or so. You could even do it Bad Blood in Montreal. Those two guys, Hell in a Cell, KO enters as the world heavyweight champion. Sammy beats him for the title. That's the way Silver King books the damn territory.
I was going to say that would require Kevin Owens winning a world championship.
It would.
And it ain't going to be the WWE championship.
I said world heavyweight.
there was another that kind of ties into a second problem I had with this, but it wasn't about the match. So if we want to do the post match.
Yeah. So let's talk about post match. So KO was getting ushered backstage when all of a sudden he stopped, turned around, attacked some of the officials that were kind of holding him back. Then he pulled up the ringside mat and it was obvious what was coming next. Just as he was about to end Zayn's life, Randy Orton's music hit. It sent KO back into the ring to wait for him. Owens grabbed his own neck, reminding why he was out. Owens dared him to attack. Orton paused, then did. He twisted a stunner attempt into an RKO. Orton went to use a chair. Instead, he thought better of it, threw it aside. He ran at Owens for a punt kick, except he was intercepted by nearly a dozen officials at once. So he RKO'd 4 security guards in succession, got a massive pop. It was great seeing Orton as usual. The punt kick attempt, it brought back some fun memories. And I like that they didn't take the easy way out to have Randy enter when the referees were down, even though it was unsanctioned. He could have done whatever he wanted and then cost KO the match and give it to Sammy. You and I talked extensively on the Ultimate Preview, on the Go Home, really for weeks now, how Owens absolutely had to win this match because he lost every other major feud recently. If he's going to win something, he's got to beat Zayn, and it's unsanctioned. He's got to absolutely destroy him. So he did. Orton came out after the fact. He had a problem with Owens. He doesn't care who wins that match. He's not Sammy's best friend. It didn't matter. Orton got his job done. It created some needed juice to kick off their WrestleMania build, and I think they should be able to stack on that over the next 49 days.
There was no reason to do this on this show, even more so in hindsight. But in the moment, I didn't like it because it immediately just moved us past Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, blow off unsanctioned, brutal match. And we're just immediately into, all right, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, here we go. Oh man, like that's the thing to come talk about coming out of this. I don't like that. It should have been, man, Kevin Owens put a beating on Sami Zayn. I can't believe he did that. That sick bastard. And then that's it. And Kevin Owens gets to walk out on top. Instead, even when he wins a match, he leaves the show getting beaten up a bit.
Yeah.
Like, and not being on top. And when you have the Jade thing in the opening, and especially when you have John Cena turning heel at the end of your show, you don't need to do this here.
So
like,
when do you want that? You want that Friday on SmackDown?
Yeah, Kevin Owens comes out, cuts a promo in front of the crowd, talks about how he beat up Sami Zayn, crowd's booing him like crazy, Randy Orton's music hits, and off we go. Like, just like save it. And Randy Orton's first return a couple years ago, a year ago or so, was when Punk also came back, and it got overshadowed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we have Randy Orton. We have Randy Orton's return
14
here
months
to get
ago.
into WrestleMania season, and that's getting overshadowed by John Cena turning heel. Like, you didn't need to do this here. And like Kevin Owens again never gets to end something on top, even when he wins. And we're probably not picking him to win the WrestleMania match between these two. So like, I just didn't understand.
So
why you had to do
you definitely have valid points. Here's what I'm going to say to you. WWE in front of 38,000 people with $1,000 tickets, like thousands of dollars per ticket, right? They booked 4 matches. And yeah, they had John Cena turn heel, which was an epic moment with Rock and Cody Rhodes. So they booked 5 segments for these fans. I really don't hate the fact that these people, we talk about the prices and how WWE promotes the largest
You
dates
hate this crap
and all this bullshit. Yeah, we hate it. But
you hate it.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Of course, you do too.
You hated this. You hated this Toronto crowd, and now you want them to get their money's worth.
Oh no! This crowd sucked. But I thought you were saying I hate that they promote the record gates. I was going to say you hate it more than I do. We both hate it. But yeah, this crowd sucked. But they're still fans, and they still paid $1,500 for like the worst seats. And maybe the dynamic pricing had changed. Some people spent $10,000 or more for their tickets. for a show that's put in a stadium, that they're giving you 4 matches and a talking segment at the end, as epic as it was, giving them a Jade Cargill return and a Randy Orton return, I'm not going to sit here and criticize it. On top of that, the ending of this match really sold. It was like a extended celebration for KO. Once he hit that pop-up powerbomb, initially the match was over. Then he goes outside, he does the 2 shots into the ring post, basically 3 more pop-up powerbombs, 2.5, because one of them was botched. He rolls him into the ring, gets the fall. He's celebrating then. He walks out. They're taking him to the back. They're literally forcing him to the back because he's such a piece of shit. Then he comes back. He pulls up the ring mat. He got an extended moment. I don't want to call it a celebration, but where it could have sunk in. The problem was not that Owens didn't get time. The problem was the crowd. Because if this happened in Montreal, his ass would have been booed from really the second the bell rang or the second his entrance hit through the end and all the way to the back. Instead, this crowd just ebbed and flowed. They popped for moments and they just didn't give reactions the rest of the way.
You're crapping on the crowd and making my point.
You're doing it in retrospect, though. You're like, oh, the crowd wasn't good, so they shouldn't have gotten it. No,
I don't think that. The crowd has nothing to do with.
So how am I making your point then?
By you said the crowd deserves this, and then you start talking about how bad the crowd is.
The fans that paid the money for the tickets on a show that had 4 matches and a talking segment deserved multiple returns. The fact that they were a shitty crowd is irrelevant to the fact that they deserved it for the money they spent. But that's irrelevant to the point I'm making.
I get what you're saying. I just think those fans on their way home, Randy Orton's return is like not at the top of what they're talking about.
Dude, Randy Orton is one of the most popular superstars in the entire company. It is definitely, holy shit, we got John Cena.
How the show ended? That is the thing people are talking about.
Yeah, of course. And for the 40,000 people that went to the show, they also got Randy Orton returning.
I just don't think it was needed.
Okay.
The fans.
So you do it on SmackDown where Owens is standing in the ring and then Orton comes out, which we've seen a million times. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was unique the way they did it. Not unique. I thought it was.
I also think it lessened the impact of the match to immediately move on to the next thing.
I disagree. I disagree with that. There was because there was enough time in the finish because that was extended. I disagree. If the bell rang and like Owens immediately went after him and the Orton came out, then I would have a problem with it.
But we're not leaving it being like, man, is Sami Zayn okay? What's he gonna like? No, we're just like, nope, forget.
So okay, I'll agree with you that it lessened the impact of Zayn getting hurt to the extent that he did, but it didn't lessen the impact of Owens being the one to do it to him. Is that a fair middle ground?
It's just kind of wild to end a vicious match by just moving on to the next one. It felt weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, in an ideal world, the way I would have done it to like satiate both of us would be to have like Owens go all the way to the back and getting booed and like he gets dirty looks from people in gorilla position. And then Orton meets him right outside gorilla position, beats the shit out of him, drags him back throughout to the arena. And that's the way he does his return. You kind of get a best of both worlds in that situation. But hopefully on SmackDown this Friday, when we see Owens, there's the same distaste for him, what he did to Sammy, as what New Day did to Big E. And we'll see if that actually happens. He also would have to be there and show up in the ring. You see, you want him to show up in the ring and do a talking segment, which you just said a couple minutes ago he hasn't done in months. So
correct.
All right, let's move to the final match on this card. We'll go through this rather quick. Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus against Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. Trish got choked up on SmackDown with a mic. She opened the show. I'm not even a hockey fan, and this woman got me in an absolute chokehold with that Maple Leafs jersey get up and everything that existed right there.
I was up all night.
She was great working the crowd. She got emotional about her kids watching her wrestle live for the first time on her 25th anniversary. I thought they'd play that into the match, like with Nia taunting the kids. They never did that. Then Trish brought Tiffy out. They threw their custom jerseys into the crowd. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, who was dressed like the effing Mountie, by the way, interrupted. Chelsea had
unbelievable.
She had a great line about Austin Matthews, a Toronto star. And then she got Major Cheap Heat saying the United States is better. This obviously became a match. Stratton did nothing to beat our allegations last week, but she was also given less than zero material here. Stratus dominating the opening segment made it largely boring because She was just happy-go-lucky about her career, but Green and Niven coming out raised the rent substantially. Chelsea commanded the mic. She took this from a bit of a yawn to a fun-ass segment. In other words, Chelsea got me to care. We had Stratton and Green. It started during the commercial, so I'm not really sure about the length of the match. Green hit Rough Rider. Stratton countered Unpretty Her into a rolling senton, awesome double stomp. Piper pulled her partner out of the ring, so Tiffy hit a standing swanton bomb ringside. She went to do it inside when Nia and Candice first attacked Trish before a DQ. The heels got most of the licks, but ultimately they ran away from the faces. Given it was 2-on-2 in the ring as a confrontation, I figured they were going to do like a new team warm-up match 24 hours out. Instead, WWE did a freaking champion versus champion match on a whim with zero fanfare. They put their top 2 women's champions on SmackDown in a match, let them wrestle for like 4 minutes of TV time, and then ran a DQ finish. I'm not sure that this would have gotten an ugly in our regular weekly segment, because I did like the opening segment with Chelsea and Trish and all that, but it absolutely would have gotten a bad. It was a total waste.
The takeaway from the segment is that Chelsea Green is the most entertaining person in the women's division right now. And going into this tag team match for the show, I was just thinking, I want Chelsea Green on my show. Piper Niven as the Mountie, unbelievable. These two are so funny together.
Yep.
And I'm glad they at least got a bit here on SmackDown. For those people who don't know, Austin Matthews plays for the Maple Leafs, but he also played for the United States in the Four Nations tournament, and he was out of position on the game-winning goal and got some heat for it. So it was like a double heat type of thing.
Oh, he was.
But,
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, and so this was that, but then champion versus champion, and we're DQing him. Okay, I would have given it a bad or an ugly.
Yeah.
But my takeaway was, I'd rather see Chelsea and Piper more than any of the other 4 that we're going to see at the Chamber.
Unfortunately, that is true. So we had Tiffy and Trishy time against Nia and Candice. This was second on the show, so the women went back-to-back to open Elimination Chamber. Stratus hit a tornado DDT on Jax, who ragdolled her back and flung her into the ring post. LeRae hit a dropkick. Stratton got a hot tag with an Alabama slam on Candice, plus a great spinebuster and back suplex on Nia. Stratus took LeRae off the ropes with a handstand Rana, only to take Jax off the ropes with an avalanche Stratusfaction. Candice broke the cover with a moonsault, and then I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think Trish forgot to get out of the ring, so Tiffy kind of booted her out of the ring and then ran over, hit prettiest moonsault ever on Nia for the win in 12 minutes. This was all it needed to be. Credit to Trish for working way more time in the match than I'd ever have expected, more than Tiffy did, probably because it was in Toronto, but still. Jax was kept strong. She needed Stratusfaction and PME to get pinned, though it does leave me wanting Tiffy still to get a no-doubter win over Nia before WrestleMania. Candice also got a substantial number of spots, despite being the 4th wheel. Stratton looked much better than she did on Friday. She actually got cheered over Stratus in Toronto. I really struggled to find any fault with it. And once again, it's just incredible the level to which Trish can work at nearly 50 years old, not doing this regularly at all. 3.25 stars and a B. It was entertaining. It was fine to be on the show, but was it the worst match of the night? Technically, yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, of the 4, but it was perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's the worst of 4. That doesn't mean it was bad, right?
It did what it needed to do, and the winners we expected are who won. Yeah, I think we said this during Trish's last run, but she wrestles better now than I think she ever did before.
She does, dude. It's so crazy.
Partly because the women's wrestling division is so much better, and so there's just a lot better things to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was fine. This was good. Now let's get Tiffany feeling like a big deal and a clear baby face over these. I
think they got to turn her heel.
They still have a lot to build with her, and SmackDown wasn't great either. So at least Charlotte didn't come out at the end.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
So
let's get Tiffany, just do some basic babyface stuff. Let's get to know her as a character, as a person. We still don't really know her other than when she came up and they kind of tell us her background. Give us her story, give us all the stuff so we can start to connect with her, as opposed to just being an idea.
They need to create sentiment that will have us connect with her as a babyface, rather than just she's pretty and talented, so we want to root for her. They have to give us more than that. And the real answer here is Stratton's a better heel than she is a face. It's just clear as day.
Yeah.
But they can't put her heel now because she's going up against Charlotte, Charlotte has to be heel because she cannot be a face. She's the worst face of all time, potentially, in the women's division. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where, like, we want Tiffy to be a face because she gets cheered and she should align with the way the fans are responding to her, but she's just extremely poor when it comes to cutting promos and doing that gimmick. So we'll have to see how they do it on the road to WrestleMania. But so far, the Stratton Flair build has been really the worst out of anything on the road to WrestleMania right now. We'll see if they rectify it this coming Friday on SmackDown and going forward. So that wraps up WWE Elimination Chamber, all of our instant analysis of the matches and everything that led into them. Chris, let's move over to our grades segment. It started with our pre-show expectation grades. We posted polls on Twitter at Getting Overcast, both before the show and after the show, to gauge what all of you thought it was going to be, and then what it actually was, how much you enjoyed WWE Elimination Chamber. So starting with the pre-show expectation grades, you and I on the Ultimate Preview both said 88B+. That was our expectation. All of you are Getting Overheads who voted on Twitter. 45% said A range, 45% said B+ to B, 8% B- to C+, 2% C or lower. That rounded out to an 89.9 or a 90. So your expectation for the show was higher than Vintage and the Silver King at 90 A-. So Chris, as always, when we do these grades, you get the opportunity to go first. And I really hope you're not going to say the number and grade that I already have written down. But what was your final grade for WWE Elimination Chamber?
This is tough. It's really tough because none of the matches were bad. I'd say one was really good.
Which one?
But we also, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn.
Okay.
That was the best match.
It was the best match.
But the chambers weren't bad. They weren't amazing, but you know, they were what they were. And I'm always about, did you give us moments? And they gave us a lot of moments. They gave us Jade coming back. They gave us Randy Orton coming back. They gave us the John Cena heel turn. So how much do I weigh that?
Let me also remind you, they also gave us Cena Punk extensively in that match.
Yes.
We had Belair and Liv extensively in that match, which was fantastic. And the moments individually in the KO and Sammy match, but please continue.
If this was just about the wrestling, I'd probably give it a B or B+.
Oh, really? Huh.
If it's just a wrestling, just one really good match out of 4. Like there's not a ton. What
would your grade have been on the men? I know you don't do the match grades like I do. What would your grade have been on the men's chamber?
3.5. Like
really,
it was fine. But like I don't think the ceiling on chamber matches is high. It's hard to do a good chamber.
Yeah, I understand, but I think that's immensely low. But okay, please go ahead.
And so, but the moments were so big, and I'm torn between an A- and an A right now. And I think I'm ultimately going to go with an A- and a 93. Because I don't want... Because the wrestling was just not overall there for me to say A show. Like, I of all of these, I'll go back and watch some clips of things, but if I was to go watch a whole match, there's only one on this card I would do. So it doesn't feel like I can give it an A if that's the case. So I'm going to go A-.
Yeah, that's interesting because you're going to watch that final segment. I mean, maybe not as much as things that we'll watch from WrestleMania 40 and the build up to WrestleMania 40, which you and I talked about how many times we rewatch stuff, or also like the CM Punk return at Survivor Series War Games. We watched that, what did we say, like 50 times each, something like that. The main event of the show, you're going to watch dozens of times before WrestleMania, and you're probably going to watch it hundreds of times in your life. And that came after what I thought was an extremely solid Elimination Chamber match for the men. I mean, it's an A. Now, might I downgrade it to like 4.25 on rewatch? Very possible. Very possible.
What are you giving an A?
I gave the men's chamber an A, the match. But I gave it 4 or 5. I think I'm probably going to wind up downgrading it.
Man, I just, maybe it's just me. I don't like chamber matches. Like they're just hard to get going.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you have I don't know what's the opposite of a proclivity, but the opposite of a proclivity to those types of matches, then you're naturally going to enjoy the show less than you otherwise would. Like if you hate Royal Rumbles, you're not going to be a huge fan of the Royal Rumble show, right? Just naturally how it's going to go. I thought the match was extremely well put together and well wrestled, and the Cena Punk moments meant a lot to me. Like as a wrestling fan, as someone who watched those guys go toe to toe, and what was Cena's best feud ever? I mean, long-term feud. It was Cena and Punk. Excuse me. So that meant a lot. I thought the women crushed it in their match. Certainly not as good as the men's match, apples to apples, but awesome. And KO and Sammy was fantastic. The Jade moment, the Orton moment returning, and the final part of that show had me really high for this. So before I give my grade, I always let the Getting Over heads go first. Chris, this is how they graded out. 74% said this was between an A+ and an A. I think that's second only to WrestleMania 40 Night 2. I believe that's the case.
Probably. 22%
said A- to B+, 4% B to B-. That's it. That's a 95.82. Rounds up to a 96. The highest A possible, just short of an A+. That is the way our Getting Over heads voted. And let me scroll back to see how many votes this got, because I believe it was a significant number, 275. So that's not a minority opinion. That is a significant average. I'm with them from the standpoint that this was an A show. Zero question about it in my mind. I told you the matches I loved and why I loved them. I think going to a 96 is basically saying like this show was almost perfect, which anything really between a 97 and 100 is, which is why we almost never give them. I think we've given 2 A+ ever in the history of this podcast, and I am not that close to it. But I do believe this was a full A show. I don't know that it could have been executed better overall outside of some preference points that we mentioned on this instant analysis. So I'm at a flat 95 out of 100 in A. I thought it repaired so many issues coming out of Royal Rumble. And even more importantly than that, it set fire to the road to WrestleMania, which is exactly what you want the final PLE before the biggest show of the year to do. I'm excited for Raw. I'm excited for SmackDown. And I cannot wait to see what comes over the ensuing 49 days. So it's an A for me.
So wait, what number did you give it?
95.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like we're not that far off. I mean, if I gave it a 94, if I was 1 point higher, it'd be a 94. So yeah, no, I mean
we're always close to each other. We're never
it's not
massively opposed.
I'm not surprised by the listener reaction when you come off of an unbelievable closing segment like that, and it's going to be great.
Don't forget, they vote as soon as the show goes off the air. We're giving our grades like 90 minutes later by the time we finish this podcast. So we allow things to settle and we talk them through. It does come across differently. Well, look, Chris, this was an extensive instant analysis to WWE Elimination Chamber and all the go-home elements that were involved in it as well. I just want to remind everyone, we're going to be back on Tuesday with our next WWE episode. We will have a second look at Elimination Chamber, any extenuating thoughts that you and I had on the show that we either forgot to mention when we listened back, or we go ahead and give it a rewatch and have additional stuff that we want to say. We will cover all of that, plus your questions and comments. You can send them in on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You can also email us, gettingoverpod@gmail.com, or you can ask them on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. But wherever you send the questions or comments, we'll be sure to infuse as many of them as possible into our Tuesday WWE episode on those social media handles at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You can follow us for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all of that good stuff. You can also vote in those pre and post show polls we just mentioned. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. You get full audio episodes. You also get video clips from all of our interviews. Please remember that here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast,
It's all about the five.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. And lastly,
I happen to love the number 5.
sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up there. You get bonus audio, instant reactions to every major TV show, and exclusive news posts every week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Quite a night here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Plenty of performance-enhancing audio for your ear holes over the last 2 weeks and over the next 49 days through the road to WrestleMania 41. For Vintage Chris Vanini, this is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.